The galaxy was alive once. Stars burned bright, planets thrived with strange and beautiful life, and countless civilizations filled the dark with voices. But now, silence grew heavier with each passing year. One by one, the voices vanished. Entire species, once proud and strong, disappeared without warning. At first, the disappearances were whispers, a signal cut short, a trade route left empty, a world no longer answering its neighbors. People said it was war, or disease, or a disaster hidden from the public. But as more and more stars grew quiet, fear spread. No one could explain it. The survivors began to speak, not many, just fragments of broken messages carried through space. Their voices were filled with terror. They said the same words again and again. They came, they hunted. No one survived. The galaxy trembled. Hunters were not known by name. No one even knew what they looked like at first. They left behind no witnesses, only ruins. Cities were turned into ash, fleets into wreckage. There was no mercy, no negotiation, no chance to flee. Once the hunters chose a species, that species was erased. Civilizations that once thought themselves powerful fell like sand before the tide. The great reptilian empire of Scorith, whose fleets had stretched across 3 sectors, was gone in a single cycle. The wise and peaceful Solari, who had built towers that touched the sky, were turned to dust. Even the warlike Krail, feared across the stars, were silenced, and the galaxy watched in horror. Every race lived with the same question: who will be next? Worlds fortified their defenses. Ships patrolled their borders. Alliances were made, then broken, as panic spread. But it did not matter. The hunters could not be stopped. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, their armies merciless. Every defense was only a delay. The silence spread like a disease. Where there had been 10,000 voices across the stars, there were now a few hundred, then fewer, until the galaxy felt empty, as though the hunters were not just killing species, but erasing the very soul of the universe. And still, no one understood why. The hunters did not conquer worlds. They did not build empires. They did not enslave. They came, they killed, and they left. It was not war. It was extermination. Stories grew, wild and fearful. Some said the hunters fed on life itself. Others believed they were machines, destroying all they saw. A few whispered they were not killing for food or power, they were killing for sport. Whatever the truth, no one could stop them. Then the signals reached Earth. Humanity had always looked to the stars with hope. Space was mystery, possibility, a frontier waiting to be claimed. But when the first fragments arrived, that hope turned to dread. Broken messages from alien worlds, desperate cries for help, told the same story. The hunters were coming. The governments of Earth argued. Some said it was a trick, a lie to draw humanity into fear. Others said the aliens' war was not humanity's problem, but the evidence grew stronger. Telescopes saw ships moving at impossible speed. Listening stations caught faint echoes of screams in languages no human could understand. And then, one night, a signal was received that was clear. It was not scrambled or broken. It was the last message of a dying world. The alien's voice shook with terror. They hunted every species, it said, and now they are coming for you. Silence followed. The people of Earth felt the weight of those words. Humanity had always believed in its strength, its resilience, its ability to endure. But the galaxy was filled with species far older, far stronger, far wiser, and all of them had fallen. If they could not survive, what chance did humanity have? Across the world, fear spread. Some demanded surrender, even before the hunters arrived. Others swore they would fight, no matter the cost. Scientists worked desperately, soldiers trained, and leaders tried to prepare, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. They were not ready, and above them, in the cold dark of space, shadows moved. The hunters had noticed Earth. The silence of the galaxy was coming closer, and the question now burned in every human heart. Would they vanish like the rest, or would they fight, even knowing the cost? The story had not yet begun, but its opening was already written in silence, in fear, in the endless march of hunters who had never failed. And so the galaxy held its breath. The warning shook Earth to its core. After the last message from the dying world, no one could deny it anymore. Humanity was next. In secret rooms and crowded streets, fear spread like fire. Some people laughed it away, calling it a hoax. Others stayed glued to their screens, replaying the aliens' broken words again and again. Governments tried to calm the panic, but the truth was too heavy to hide. The hunters were real. They had destroyed civilizations far greater than Earth, and now they were coming. World leaders gathered in emergency councils. Generals slammed their fists on tables, demanding war plans. Scientists spoke of defenses, of new weapons, of faster ships. Politicians argued about money, alliances, and survival. Every nation wanted to lead, but none of them could agree. The hunters would not wait for humans to settle their pride. Outside the halls of power, ordinary people asked simpler questions. If these creatures had erased thousands of species, what hope did humans have? Could Earth really fight back? Or was it only a matter of time before silence swallowed them too? The first ships appeared on the edges of the solar system, dark shapes against the stars, moving faster than human eyes could follow. Telescopes tracked them, recording impossible maneuvers. They did not answer signals, they did not hide, they were watching. Panic rose. Some demanded peace. Messages were broadcast into the void, offers of alliance, surrender, even worship. But the hunters never replied. They had never replied to anyone. Their answer was always the same: death. The human military scrambled. Fleets were launched into space, their weapons loaded, their crews trembling. The first contact was not a meeting, it was an attack. A small human ship patrolling near Neptune vanished. No distress call, no survivors, just silence. Fear turned to rage. Humanity had seen this story before in its own history, predators rising, weaker prey falling. But this time, the prey was them, and humans had never been good at dying quietly. A secret meeting took place under the frozen ice of Antarctica. Leaders from every nation sat in a vast underground chamber, their voices tense. For once, they did not argue about borders or power. For once, they spoke only of survival. Plans were drawn, resources were shared. Old enemies shook hands. Humanity, divided for centuries, began to unite. Still, unity was not enough. The hunters were too strong, too fast, too merciless. Humanity needed something more than weapons. They needed understanding. That was when the first survivors were found. A broken ship drifted into the solar system, its engines failing, its crew near death. They were not human. Their bodies were strange, thin and scaled, their voices harsh, with pain, but they carried knowledge. They had seen the hunters. They had survived one attack, barely through translators. They told their story. Their world had burned, their people erased. The hunters had descended like a storm, killing without reason. The survivors had fled into the dark, chased across the stars, until at last they reached Earth. They spoke of what the hunters feared: armies, not weapons, but unpredictability. Every species had fought the same way, with fleets and defenses and cities, and every species had fallen. But humans, the survivors said, were different. They had built empires from nothing. They had destroyed each other in wars, but risen stronger. They were dangerous in ways the hunters could not predict. The council listened. For the first time, there was a spark of hope. The hunters were coming. Yes, their ships were already near. But if humanity could learn their patterns, if they could find a weakness, maybe, just maybe, they could break the silence that had swallowed so many before them. In hidden labs, scientists worked day and night, tearing apart fragments of alien wreckage, searching for answers. Soldiers trained in new ways, preparing not for defense, but for guerrilla war. Small groups began forming across the world, not armies but hunters of their own, men and women who would fight in shadows. Striking back with surprise, the hunters thought they were facing another easy prey. They thought Earth would fall like all the others, but humanity was preparing something different. The first confrontation came quickly. A fleet of hunter ships entered orbit around Mars. Human warships rose to meet them. The sky above the red planet lit up with fire. The battle was brutal. Human weapons tore into the alien hulls, but the hunters were faster, stronger. Ships burned, crews screamed, entire fleets were shredded. For every alien ship destroyed, 10 human ships fell. It seemed hopeless, but then, something unexpected happened. A small human craft, damaged and burning, rammed itself into the side of a massive hunter ship. The explosion ripped through the alien vessel, tearing it apart. The hunters had not expected such an act of desperation. They had not expected humans to fight with such reckless fury, and for the first time, the hunters hesitated back on Earth. The news spread like wildfire. Humanity had lost a battle, yes, but they had destroyed one of the hunters' ships. No species had ever done that before. It was not victory, but it was proof. Proof that the hunters could bleed. Proof that humanity was not just prey. The galaxy had fallen silent under the hunters' rule, but Earth's voice had not yet been silenced. Humanity was preparing to speak in the only language predators understood. The hunt was not over. It had only just begun. The silence after the battle at Mars was heavier than any loss before it. Billions watched as the wreckage drifted across the void, human ships broken, alien vessels glowing with strange fire. Yet among the ruins floated proof the hunters were not invincible. One of their great ships was gone, torn apart by human desperation. On Earth, that single victory lit a fire. Across every city, people who had been drowning in fear now whispered a new word: hope. They knew the price was terrible. Thousands had died, fleets had been reduced to ash, but humanity had done what no other species had managed. They had forced the hunters to hesitate. The hunters did not retreat far. Their ships gathered beyond Mars, waiting, watching. They circled like predators testing their prey. Earth had little time to prepare, and everyone knew it. In the days that followed, the world changed. Factories that once built cars or phones now forged weapons and armor. Spaceports overflowed with volunteers, young, old, poor, rich, or willing to fight. Soldiers trained, engineers worked, scientists studied fragments of hunter wreckage. Every nation forgot its borders. Humanity, divided for so long, now stood as one. Yet even as hope grew, so did dread. No one knew when the hunters would strike again, only that they would. The answer came one cold night. Without warning, the sky lit up over Earth. Shadows blotted out the stars. Dozens of hunter ships appeared in orbit, their hulls black as stone, their glowing eyes staring down at the planet. Sirens wailed, people ran for shelters, militaries scrambled. Humanity braced for the first battle on its homeworld. The attack began with fire. The hunters unleashed beams of energy that split the sky, tearing apart satellites, scorching the upper atmosphere. Cities went dark as power grids collapsed. Communication systems fried. Panic spread faster than flames. But Earth was not defenseless. From hidden bases deep underground, missile silos opened. From oceans, submarines surfaced. From secret stations, in orbit, human ships rose again. The sky over Earth became a storm. Missiles streaked upward. Interceptors darted through the clouds. Laser defenses lit the dark. Explosions thundered as hunter ships met the fury of a united world. For every alien vessel that descended, a dozen human weapons answered. Hunters fell crashing into the seas, their wreckage burning across forests and deserts. But the price was steep. Cities crumbled under alien fire. Millions died in moments. Amid the chaos, something strange happened. Small human strike teams began to slip behind enemy lines, while fleets clashed above. These teams targeted the hunters directly, using stolen alien tech, sabotage, and sheer recklessness. They boarded hunter craft, planting explosives, seizing weapons. Humanity was not just defending, they were hunting. In one ruined city, a team of only 6 humans brought down a hunter ship by luring it low and collapsing skyscrapers onto its hull. In another, a single fighter pilot, wounded and alone, rammed his jet into the heart of an alien war machine. The explosion lit up the night, and the hunters reeled. The hunters had never seen such madness. No other species had fought this way. They had always conquered orderly armies, predictable defenses. But humans were different. They fought like cornered wolves, wild, desperate, and impossible to predict. The battle raged for hours. The ground shook, the seas boiled, the sky burned. Earth was torn apart, but humanity refused to fall. At dawn, the hunters withdrew. Their ships pulled back, retreating beyond the atmosphere. Smoke and ash covered the planet. Cities lay in ruins, but Earth still lived. The hunters had expected another easy kill. Instead, they had been wounded. In the ruins, survivors cheered. They had suffered, yes, but they had endured. For the first time, the hunters had been forced not just to pause, but to retreat. Across the galaxy, hidden eyes watched other species, long silent and hiding in fear, intercepted human transmissions. They saw the impossibly young race that refused to die. The legend of Earth began to spread. But humanity did not celebrate for long. Leaders knew the truth. The hunters would return. They would come back stronger, angrier, determined to erase the defiance they had witnessed. So humanity began to plan, no longer content to wait, no longer willing to hide. They swore that the next battle would be different. Earth would not just defend, Earth would strike back. In secret labs, engineers pieced together weapons from alien wreckage. In training camps, soldiers learned how to fight not as armies, but as hunters themselves, fast, sharp, merciless. Across the world, a single thought grew louder. They hunted every species. Now, we hunt them. And somewhere in the dark beyond the stars, the hunters gathered once more. Their voices, cold and cruel, echoed through their fleets. Humanity had dared to resist. Humanity had tasted blood. Now, they would be tested like never before. The hunt was far from over. But for the first time, it was no longer one-sided. Galaxy, silent for so long, was beginning to hear a new sound, the voice of prey turning into predator. The smoke of battle still clung to Earth weeks after the hunters pulled back. Skies were grey, oceans scarred, and entire cities lay in ruins. Yet humanity was alive. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, prey had survived a direct assault. The hunters would return, everyone knew that. But for now there was a fragile moment of silence. In that silence, humanity searched for answers. Why had the hunters retreated? What had shaken them? How could they, a species so young and fragile, have done what no one else had managed? The answer came not from victory, but from accident. In the wreckage of a fallen hunter craft, deep in the ruins of South America, a human strike team found something impossible. Among the twisted metal and shattered weapons lay a survivor, a hunter. The creature was massive even in defeat, its armored skin cracked, its breathing harsh and heavy. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen, part beast, part machine, its eyes burning faintly like dying embers. Most expected it to die quickly, but against all odds it clung to life. Commanders wanted it executed immediately. Soldiers raised their guns, eager to avenge the millions lost, but a voice of reason stopped them. Scientists begged for the chance to study it. For the first time in history, a living hunter was in human hands. Killing it would bring satisfaction. Studying it could bring survival. Reluctantly, the commanders agreed. The hunter was bound, caged, and taken to a secure underground facility. Guards surrounded it day and night, their weapons always ready. The first days were tense. The creature refused to speak, if it could even speak at all. It snarled, growled, slammed its body against the reinforced walls of its prison. Many believed it was only a matter of time before it broke free. Yet the scientists watched, recorded, and searched for cracks in its armor. Then something unexpected happened. A young linguist working with the team noticed patterns in the sounds it made. The growls were not random, they repeated, they had rhythm. She began to copy them, testing sounds back at the creature. At first, it only glared. Then, slowly, its head tilted. It responded. The breakthrough came one night when alarms echoed through the base. The hunter had spoken not in words, but in a guttural voice that translated into human language through crude machines. Its first sentence chilled every listener. You are not like the others. The interrogation began. At first the hunter mocked them. It called humans weak, fragile, destined to fall. It described how it had watched entire empires burn, how the hunters had erased countless species. But beneath its cruelty was something else. Fear. The linguist pressed harder. Why did you retreat? Why did you not finish us? The creature's burning eyes narrowed. For the first time, it hesitated. Then it spoke a truth that none had expected. Because you fight wrong. Confusion swept through the room. The hunter explained, piece by piece. Every species they had hunted fought the same way. They built armies, fleets, fortresses. They believed strength alone could stop the hunters. And every one of them had been predictable. But humanity had been different. They had sacrificed themselves recklessly, turning their own deaths into weapons. They had collapsed buildings on invaders, rammed ships into war machines, fought in ways no other species dared. To the hunters, it was not bravery, it was madness. Madness that worked. You are chaos, the creature growled. You do not fight to live, you fight to kill, even when you die. You are not prey, you are something else. The words spread, like wildfire through the human command. For the first time they had a glimpse of the hunter's weakness, not a flaw in their ships or weapons, but a flaw in their minds. They were predators, used to order, to patterns, to prey that followed. Rules. Humanity broke those rules. The scientists demanded more. What else did the hunters fear? What drove them to hunt at all? But the creature refused to answer. It laughed, even as its body weakened. You think you can win. We are endless. You kill one, 1,000 more rise. You cannot stop us. The linguist leaned close, her voice steady. Maybe not. But we can. Hurt you, and redditors that bleed can die. The hunter's gaze darkened for the first time, its mask of superiority cracked. Days later, the creature was dead. Whether from wounds or by its own will, no one knew. But its words remained. Humanity was not like the others. Humanity was chaos, and chaos was the hunter's fear. In the war councils that followed, strategies changed. No longer would Earth rely on fleets and fortresses alone. Instead, they would become unpredictable, ruthless, impossible to predict. They would fight as hunters, not prey. Special units were formed, trained to move in shadows, to strike without warning, to destroy not just ships, but the will of the enemy. Weapons were built to exploit weakness, traps designed to twist the hunters' own tactics against them. The galaxy had fallen silent because every species had fought the same way. Humanity would fight differently. Humanity would become the noise in the silence, and far beyond the stars. When news of the captured hunter's death reached its kind, unease spread. The humans had learned something. The prey had begun to understand the predator. The hunt was turning. The days of waiting were over. Humanity had seen enough of what the hunters could do, and they had learned enough to strike back. The councils no longer spoke only of survival. Now they spoke of vengeance. Factories thundered day and night, building weapons not meant for defense, but for ambush. Scientists fused alien wreckage with human engineering, creating strange hybrids of technology. Soldiers were trained to break rules, to abandon the idea of order and fight with unpredictability. Humanity was preparing not for a war of survival, but for a hunt. The first strike came quietly. A single hunter ship entered Earth's orbit to test the defenses. Instead of open fire, humans let it pass. They tracked it, waited until it descended into the ruins of an old city. Then, from beneath the shattered buildings, teams of hidden fighters rose. Explosives planted in tunnels collapsed upward, tearing through the alien craft. Rockets and railguns hammered the wreckage. In minutes, the mighty predator was reduced to broken fire. The galaxy would remember that day. For the first time, prey had set a trap for the hunters. From that point, Earth's strategy changed. Instead of waiting for attacks, human ships began to move through the dark of space. Small fleets, cloaked and hidden, struck at isolated hunter patrols. Sometimes they did not even fire weapons. They rammed, sabotaged, and left chaos behind. Each strike was ruthless, unpredictable, and devastating. The hunters were furious. They had come to erase humanity, not to be hunted themselves. Their fleets grew larger, their assaults more violent, but the more they struck, the more humans adapted. Every loss became a lesson. Every wound became a weapon. Stories of human raids spread far beyond Earth. Aliens hiding in the shadows of ruined worlds heard whispers of defiance. They heard how humans lured hunters into asteroid belts and buried them under falling rock. How a single human pilot destroyed 3 predator ships by flying through a gas storm the hunters dared not enter. How resistance fighters turned the ruins of dead cities into killing grounds where the hunters were ambushed and slaughtered. For the first time in centuries, hope returned to the galaxy. The hunters began to falter. They had never faced prey that fought back this way. Their arrogance turned to caution, their caution into fear. And humanity fed on that fear. Yet every victory carried a cost. Earth was bleeding. Millions were dead. Cities burned. Oceans poisoned. Families lived in shelters. Food grew scarce. And the skies were filled with smoke. Humanity's strength came not from comfort but from pain, from the refusal to surrender. The world had been cornered, and cornered prey was the most dangerous of all. The hunters, once legends of terror, were now learning what legends meant to humans. Legends were not stories of fear. They were stories of resistance. The turning point came during what became known as the Siege of Titan. A massive hunter fleet descended upon Saturn's moon, determined to crush the human base there. The battle was chaos. Hunters swarmed, their firepower overwhelming, their ships darkening the skies. But humanity had prepared a trap unlike any before. Hidden beneath Titan's icy crust were nuclear warheads, buried deep in caverns and wired to collapse the moon itself. As the hunters pressed forward, the human commander gave the order. Explosions tore through Titan's core, splitting ice into fire. The moon shattered in a storm of light and stone, consuming the hunter fleet in destruction. Billions across Earth watched the broadcast. Humanity had not just survived, they had annihilated an entire fleet. The hunters had never suffered such a defeat. The message was clear. The prey had become predators. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to whisper. Survivors from other species crept out of hiding to contact Earth. They offered knowledge, technology, and secrets of the hunters in exchange for protection. For the first time, alliances formed not from fear, but from defiance. The hunters, once unstoppable, now faced something they had never known. Resistance united by humanity's example. Still, the war was far from over. For every fleet destroyed, more came. For every victory, there was tragedy. Humanity knew this was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. On the ruins of old Earth cities, leaders stood before their people. They did not promise peace. They did not promise safety. They promised the hunt. No longer will we wait for them to strike. No longer will we live in fear. We will carry the fire into their world. We will show them that humanity does not bow. We do not vanish. We endure. We fight. And now we hunt. The cheers rose like thunder from every ruined city, from every hidden base, from every ship that sailed into the void. Humanity roared. With one voice, the hunters had thought they were ending another species. Instead, they had awakened something they could not control, and far beyond the stars. In their dark strongholds, the hunters felt it for the first time. Not victory, not dominance. Fear. The galaxy was changing. The silence of extinction was ending. A new sound filled the void, the relentless footsteps of humanity, closing in. The galaxy had always whispered in fear of the hunters, but now, new whispers spread whispers of humanity. Survivors from broken civilizations carried the stories. They spoke of a young species that refused to die, of soldiers who turned rubble into weapons, of fleets that struck from shadows and vanished like ghosts. They spoke of prey that had become predator. Those whispers reached places the hunters thought silent forever. Scattered remnants of old species stirred, their hope fragile but alive. For the first time in countless ages, the hunters were not only feared, they were doubted. On Earth, the war councils knew hesitation was not enough. Humanity had to do more than survive. They had to strike at the heart. If the hunters were left to recover, the galaxy would fall again into silence. So plans were drawn, secret and daring. Humanity would carry the war beyond their skies. The first step was building alliances. Alien survivors came forward cautiously. Some were broken empires hiding among asteroid fields. Others were tiny clans drifting in forgotten space. They were weak, starving, afraid. Yet when they looked at humanity, they saw something they had lost defiance. Slowly, they joined. They offered scraps of technology, maps of old battlefields, and ancient knowledge of the hunters. Humanity accepted all of it, forging a coalition not of power, but of desperation. With every ally gained, the hunters' grip weakened. Their fleets grew slower to respond. Their patrols stretched thin. Humanity used that weakness. They launched strikes, not just in defense, but deep into enemy territory. Supply convoys burned, outposts vanished, ships disappeared into the dark. The hunters raged. They unleashed larger forces, entire armadas, to crush the rebellion. But every time they advanced, they found traps waiting. Asteroids wired with explosives, fleets hidden in the shadows of suns, small human ships that slipped into their lines, striking once, then vanishing like smoke. The turning point came when humanity found their first stronghold. It was a world shrouded in clouds, orbiting a dying star. The hunters had turned it into a fortress, their ships circling endlessly above. For centuries, no one had dared to approach, but humans dared. A fleet of human and allied ships emerged from the dark, not to fight in open war, but to hunt. They struck the defenses in silence, cutting off communication, crippling weapons. Strike teams landed on the surface, moving through tunnels carved by the hunters. For the first time, the predators felt what their prey had always felt: fear in their own lair. The battle was brutal. Humans fought in ruins, lit only by fire, their weapons echoing through the fortress halls. Hunters roared, their claws tearing through steel, but humans answered with grenades, blades, and sheer fury. Chaos spread. The fortress burned from within. When the smoke cleared, the world was gone. What had been a symbol of hunter dominance was reduced to rubble, its defenders slain. Humanity had not just survived, they had broken into the predator's own cage and shattered it. The galaxy shook. Messages spread faster than light, carried by survivors desperate to tell the story. The hunters had lost a fortress. The hunters had been defeated on their own ground. Species hiding in the dark began to rise, emboldened. What humanity had done once, others began to attempt. But the victory came with a cost. Ships were lost. Thousands of humans never returned. Earth bled resources to keep the war alive. The people knew the price, but they did not falter. They had seen the fear in the hunters' eyes. That sight was worth every sacrifice. The hunters, for the first time in their long history, began to change. Their strategies grew harsher, more reckless. They abandoned patience. They struck with fury, burning even worlds not yet touched by rebellion, desperate to remind the galaxy of their power. But it was too late. The fear was gone. Humanity had broken it. and in every council chamber, in every hidden base, in every human heart, a single truth burned: the hunters were not untouchable. They could fall. The great reversal had come. No longer were humans the prey running from extinction. Now they were the shadow in the dark, the knife in the silence. Yet, leaders knew the war was not over. Destroying fortresses and fleets was not enough. If the hunters survived in their core worlds, they would rebuild. They would return stronger, so the decision was made. Humanity and its allies would carry the fight to the very heart of the predator. Empire, they would strike the worlds that had never known fear. Preparations began. Fleets assembled, weapons never before seen were forged. The galaxy, broken and bleeding, began to move as one behind humanity's lead, and in the depths of the stars, the hunters watched. They had underestimated this species once. They had thought Earth was just another prey. Now they understood that, truth, humanity was something far worse, that the predators had awakened a predator greater than themselves. The final hunt was approaching. The day came when humanity could wait no longer. The hunters had bled, their fleets shattered, their fortresses burned, but the war would never end until their heart was broken. The decision was clear. The final hunt must begin. Across Earth and her new allies, preparations filled the skies. Fleets assembled, forged from steel, scavenged alien wreckage, and desperate hope. Soldiers marched, not with fear but with grim determination. Survivors of burned worlds volunteered to join, their eyes shining with vengeance. Humanity had never commanded such power before, and yet they knew the cost would be greater than anything they had faced. The hunter's core lay deep within a cluster of stars, surrounded by storms of fire and gravity. For ages, no one had dared to approach. It was said the place was death itself, guarded by fleets beyond number. But humanity dared. They launched not as prey, not as rebels, but as executioners. The journey through the storms was chaos. Ships were torn apart by collapsing stars, swallowed by black holes, shredded by fire. Still the fleets pressed on, carried by the will of a species that refused to stop. At last, they broke through the veil and saw it. The hunter homeworld. It was no paradise. The planet was black and jagged, its skies red with ash, its seas boiling with smoke. Towers of bone and steel rose from its surface, and above it, a swarm of hunter ships circled like carrion birds. It was the heart of terror, the nest of extinction. The hunters roared as the fleets arrived. Their armadas surged forward, filling the void with fire. Beams of energy tore through space, missiles and claws ripping through metal. The battle began in madness, a storm of light and shadow that shook the stars. Humans and their allies fought with fury. Ships weaved through impossible gaps, sacrificing themselves to destroy larger vessels. Strike teams slipped into the chaos, boarding enemy craft, turning their own weapons against them. Every moment was death, but every moment was defiance. In the heart of the battle, the human flagship drove straight toward the planet. Its commander's voice echoed across all channels. Today, we end the hunt. Today they learn fear. The flagship pierced through waves of defenders, its guns blazing. Around it, allied ships shielded its path, burning in its defense. At last it broke through the swarm and descended into the atmosphere. The planet shook as the war reached its surface. Human and alien troops stormed through the jagged towers, fighting claw to claw, blade to blade. Hunters roared in fury, their armored forms cutting down waves of soldiers, but the humans would not stop. They pressed deeper, driven by rage and memory of every world lost. In the deepest chamber of the Black Towers, the truth was revealed. The hunters were not countless individuals. They were a hive, bound by a single will, a single mind that echoed across their kind. And at the center of it all was the Quran, ancient, pulsing entity, neither beast nor machine, radiating hunger. It was the mind that had driven them to hunt every species, the mind that now trembled as humanity stood before it. The hunters surged to protect the core. Thousands died in the chamber, their screams echoing in the fire. But humanity pressed on. Explosives were planted, weapons fired, the core's defenses shattering. The entity's voice filled the hall, vast and furious. You were meant to fall like all the others. You were nothing, you were prey. A soldier raised his rifle, his voice steady. Not anymore. The final shots tore through the core. Explosions lit the chamber. The ground shook. The towers cracked. Across the planet, the hunters screamed as their unity collapsed. Their fleets faltered, their claws stilled. The hive was broken. The hunters were no longer predators. They were prey, scattered and leaderless. The galaxy roared with freedom. Worlds long silent began to rise. Survivors emerged from shadows. For the first time in centuries, the darkness lifted on Earth. The people wept and cheered. They had not only survived, they had ended the nightmare that had haunted the stars. The prey had become the predator, and the hunters would never rise again, yet the victory was not clean. Billions had died, Earth was scarred, the galaxy lay in ruins. But in the silence after the war, a new voice was heard, the voice of humanity. Carried across every star dot, it was not the voice of conquest. It was the voice of warning. Humanity had proven that no predator was invincible, no hunter eternal. They had given the galaxy something greater than survival. They had given it fire. And so the story spread. In every corner of the stars, in every hidden world, one truth was whispered again and again. They hunted every species, until humanity hunted them back.